the first thing on the agenda is the OCG Forbidden and Limited List update, which has some bangers on it, as well as some real weird decisions. As usual, it wouldn't be an OCG ban list without at least one decision that makes absolutely no sense. But there is some stuff on here that is worth talking about for sure. Let's go over the less exciting things first, I would say, and then move our way towards the more exciting things. Of course, this is not a blind reaction. This thing came out a couple of days ago, so everyone has seen it. I still wanted to jump in on it because I do think some of this stuff is interesting. The unlimits, as has been a trend with recent Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden and Limited lists, is probably the least exciting part here, which is a little bit unfortunate because they just bring some of these cards back slightly too late. Like, Pancratops to 3 is something that could have happened years ago, arguably, and we probably would have been able to play Pancratops in some formats, but now it's very late. And the same goes probably for Malicious, Luster Pendulum. You know, Pearly Delicious Memory is actually pretty good, so like that's worth mentioning, I suppose, as well as Branded Opening. Those are cards that are like interesting. But for the most part, the unlimits are all cards that definitely can and should be at 3, I think. Malicious also is pretty good, but yeah. For the semi-limits, we have a very similar, I think, a very similar picture. All the things that are coming off the list, like everything that was limited here and goes from 1 to 2, is very unlikely to make a huge impact. I do think that, I mean, if you unhit enough Pendulum cards, then maybe eventually like a Performapal Brew can come back. Masterpiece, whether that card is at 1, 2, or 3 doesn't really make a difference. The same probably goes for Morphing Jar. And the same also goes for, like, I think Zodiac Barrage also has, like, it's a good card, but I don't think it's a problem. Snatch Steal is, like, fine. But I think at this point we've established that all those take your opponent's monster cards are fine in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Realistically, the only semi-limit that I think matters here is the semi-limit of 7th Tachyon. At the same time, it's a very weird one in my opinion, because it's just like the second best Rhoda card in Ryzeal. So it's like, okay, I mean, it's fine to put it to 2, but it's still a weird decision, I think, to hit Ryzeal on that angle, right? Like, it's still like, okay, well, they still have, well, in the OCG, they still have 1 Bonfire. They still have 2 7th Tachyon. I'm pretty sure there's a card that also searches 7th Tachyon, right? Which is something that I don't think they played that before, right? So, like, they didn't play 6 copies of this card, even though there were 6 copies of it. So, putting this to 2, if you wanted to, you could just play more of the 7th Ascension or whatever it's called, right? Some of them played both, but still, like, going from 6 to 5 is a very, it's almost meaningless, to be honest with you. Like, it's a very weird one in my opinion. Like, a lot of lists that I saw playing both of those cards, they were playing like not all 6 anyways. They play like 3-2. And if they play 3-2 before, now they can just switch it around if they want to, right? They can just play 2 7th Tachyon and 3 7th Extension, and it's like fine. And then the limits. We've got some pretty good limits here, actually. And then we've got one that stands out as exceptionally useless, but we'll talk about that obviously. So I think it is worth noting that they're hitting Ryzeal relatively hard by putting X to 1, in also considering the fact that Bonfire is also at 1. I think that is worth mentioning because that basically makes hard opening X Ryzeal, which in my opinion is the best Ryzeal card. That I think is at least main deck. Main deck wise, I think X Ryzeal is definitely the best one, because it is not only is it a 1-card combo on its own that does the perfect 1-card combos, but it also is the best extender and also doubles as a board breaker sometimes. So I do think it's fair to say that X Ryzeal is the best Ryzeal card. And I think the reason why I like this one as well is because Ryzeal, at least in the current form in the TCG, Ryzeal is a little bit of a grindy deck, right? Like, Ryzeal does not always auto win on turn 1. And having no second copy of this on the follow-up turn, I think is pretty relevant. It's kind of like limiting, if you were to limit something like Sprite Blue or Sprite Jet, it would matter a lot of the times. Like when they were limited in Master Duel, it would matter a lot when like it was turn 2 and you just didn't have another copy to go through because you were just missing that free card on the next turn. And I think that matters with X Ryzeal a lot. Like I've had games against Ryzeal where it even mattered when they played Pot of Desires and they lost one copy of some of their cards, right? You can recycle it with Cross in certain scenarios, of course. However, in my experience, if the Duo Drive gets hand trapped, of course, the way that they won't have Cross unless they hard draw it, and then you know, the grind game gets significantly weaker. So this is the kind of limit that I actually like for a deck like Ryzeal, because it not only hits their most broken starter, but it also does affect their grind game in a lot of ways. So I do think hitting X Ryzeal to 1 is actually a pretty good choice. Other than that, Gold Shark and Allure of Darkness, I think fine. I understand it. I don't think it's my favorite way to hit Malice. I feel like in 2024, I was happy that Gold Sarcophagus and Allure of Darkness were coming off the ban list slowly, right? Like, Allure of Darkness has been at 3 for a while now, but Gold Sarcophagus is still at 1 in some formats. Other formats have started putting it to 2. And I'm like, I was a fan of that. I don't think Gold Sarcophagus is too powerful of a Yu-Gi-Oh card. I think if you realize Malice is this strong, I don't think you should put Gold Sarcophagus back to 1. I think you should put you should hit Malice cards directly, like they did with Ryzeal. I don't know exactly why they're so opposed to hitting the Malice cards directly instead of just doing this, but it's not a bad decision. I just think it could have been done better. Hitting Malice, that is. But okay. And then we have Gozen Match, which I'm obviously on board with, unless it was banned. But I'm pretty sure it was at 2. I think it went 2-2 recently. So, yeah. Cyberjar has been legal in the TCG and did nothing, so that card is fine. And here's the weird one, right? Here's the weird one, and that's obviously Artifact Scythe. Like, can someone please enlighten me? Why on earth did they limit Artifact Scythe? A card that if you had the statistics, which they might have statistics from Neuron or something like that. Artifact Scythe, I would guess like 99.9% is a one-of anyways. There just cannot be a logical reason to limit Artifact Scythe. That is just for everyone. I feel bad for everyone in the OCG who's been suffering from getting Scythe locked over and over and over again this past format. Looking at this, I can't even imagine how you're feeling about that. Like it must be so frustrating to get Scythe locked and be so sick of Scythe lock, and then you see this card on the Banlist update and you're like, they finally hit it, and then you realize it's just limited. And I don't know, that makes no sense to me. It's because of 3v3. So do they have a tournament where they have like a shared card pool for 3v3? I guess that would give it at least a little bit of sense. A little bit. I still think that's still not enough. Because, okay, even if that's your explanation, even if that is your explanation, then I would still say to that, well, yeah, okay, but the card still needs to be banned. Like that is not a justification for leaving Artifact Scythe legal, which is one of the most toxic cards in existence. Like, that card's been banned for us forever. Anyways. Here's one positive thing, though, which, like, here's one of the few things that the OCG now has over the TCG, which is that they banned Dweller, which is something that people have only been, I mean, you gotta give it to them, but this is something that people have only been asking for 9 years or something. I don't know exactly when did people start calling for a Dweller ban? I don't know. It's been a while, though. It's been a while. It's probably been since Mermail, since that card came out. Like, that card came out in like 2012. And even during freaking Mermail format, people were probably already pissed at Abyss Dweller. But yeah, here we are, a decade later, and it's now banned in the OCG. Very good decision. Yeah, I just wish we did more of this faster, right? Like, I think some of these moves are like saying like, yeah, we recognize that lingering floodgates like Dweller and Scythe are a problem. We also recognize that continuous floodgates like Gozen Match are a problem, but we are still hesitant on going all the way with them, right? Like, Dweller is getting banned, but why is Scythe only getting limited? You know, it's awkward, but I mean, the Dweller hit on its own, I'm a big fan of. It makes me hopeful that we also get it during Ryzeal format. The ban on Dweller, but yeah. The only other thing that I think is worth mentioning for this entire thing that I think is a little bit of a bummer as well is the fact that Max C did not go further. Like, the last list, it went from 3 to 2. And it hasn't moved further, which I think is sad. I was hoping for more. At least it didn't go back to 3. I suppose they didn't revert on it, is the only positive thing to say about it. But overall, I don't know. I would like to hear the perspective of an OCG player on this one. I think overall this list is okay. It wouldn't really be an OCG ban list if there wasn't at least some disappointing stuff on it, I think. I think the Ryzeal hit is solid. I think the Dweller ban and Gozen Match hit is solid. I think the Malice hits are understandable, but not sufficient. Everything else is kind of meh or straight up weird. So that's how I feel about it. But if anyone is from the OCG and feels differently or feels the same way, feel free to tell me. Oh yeah. You guys know if Tenpai is hit already on his lit ban list? Tenpai is hit pretty harsh in the OCG as well, yeah. It was, I think it's 1 Chundra, 1 Hymen? Oh no, they have 3 Kaimen. Ah, they have 1 field spell, 1 Chundra, right? So it's a little more powerful than it is for us, but it's still pretty hit. Oh, 1 Pydra as well, okay. Is it really 1 Pydra? When did they hit Pydra? Well, anyways, people don't really play Tenpai over there right now, so it must be they have significant hits. It's just 1 field spell, 1 Chundra. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So they still have the 3 Kaimens. So they actually hit Tenpai harder for us, which is I'm happy about that. But yeah. But yeah, that's the things that are happening in OCG land right now with the ban list, which I think is okay. You know, there's definitely been worse OCG ban list than this, but there's also been better, and this one is kind of just like average. I will say I think hitting Ryzeal relatively hard. The deck remains playable, but like this is a relatively hard hit for Ryzeal, and I think that's a good thing because in the past they've been struggling to hit things in like a appropriate time frame. They've been letting stuff like Tearlaments run rampant for way too long, so I feel like hitting Ryzeal in an appropriate time is a good thing.